So as you all know, we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of President Donald Trump.
The younger generation now tells me how tough things are. Give me a break.
Our government just let us know that whether we like it or not, we're staying in Syria indefinitely. 2 governors, one from Montana and one from the state of New York, decided to unilaterally enforce net neutrality via executive order. New Jersey becomes another state that is stepping up to enforce net neutrality. The governor of Hawaii became the 4th governor in the country to enforce net neutrality via executive order. The survivors of the Parkland, Florida shooting, they decided to not allow their voices to be silenced. We are now in our brand new studio. President Donald Trump has decided to fire his national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, and he announced that he'll be replacing him with John Bolton, who served as UN ambassador under George W. Bush's administration. And now that the teachers in West Virginia were successful, we're starting to see teachers rebel across the country. There was another unarmed black man who was shot and killed this week. His name is Stephon Clark. Donald Trump decided to bomb the capital of Syria. Democrats file suit alleging Russia-Trump campaign WikiLeaks conspired to interfere in 2016 campaign.
You guys are shoveling money at him.
That was the 2nd highest ranking Democrat admitting that they frequently stack the deck against progressives.
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
There were some reports that she actually joyfully tortured people.
But Gina Haspel said, "Good job. I like the way you're drooling."
The United States just opened up its embassy in Jerusalem. Israeli forces shot and killed 57 Palestinians. If you run a bakery, your job is to bake fucking cakes. And if you open your door to the public, you're implicitly acknowledging that you'll be serving all types of people. You don't get to pick and choose who you don't want to serve based on arbitrary characteristics or immutable characteristics. She's been putting herself in danger in order to treat wounded protesters, and a sniper from the Israeli army targeted her and killed her.
Well, they didn't know Bernie Sanders.
I had the absolute right to pardon myself. He met with Kim Jong-un, and thankfully, he didn't do one of those stupidly aggressive handshakes that he usually does. I mean, it was kind of long and awkward, but nonetheless, things seemed to go relatively well. Nearly 2,000 children have now been separated from their parents, and they're being held in these makeshift detention centers, placed in literal cages, and at some of these facilities, the conditions are prison-like. Stephen Miller, for example, was called a fascist while he was having dinner at a Mexican restaurant. Florida Attorney General and Trump surrogate Pam Bondi was confronted by protesters while attending a screening of a documentary about Mr. Rogers. Additionally, protesters gathered in front of Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nelson's house, but that was only after she was shamed while having dinner at a Mexican restaurant. U.S. Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders was denied service at the Red Hen restaurant.
And you tell them they're not welcome.
Her goal here was to condemn Maxine Waters.
I strongly disagree with those who advocate harassing folks if they don't agree with you.
The internet is under attack right now. One Democrat, this individual, Miguel Santiago, might single-handedly kill that bill. California's net neutrality law has in fact been resurrected by state lawmakers.
This is a moral problem, and your response has been to apply more paperwork to this situation.
We have a stunning upset with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez defeating corporate Democrat Joe Crowley.
Single-payer, universal health care, universal jobs.
There was a Daily Caller journalist who crashed an Ocasio-Cortez rally.
We just wrote a $2 trillion check for that tax cut, the GOP tax cut, and nobody asked those folks how are they going to pay for it. So my question is, why is it that our pockets are only empty when it comes to education and health care for our kids?
Amazon puts 7,000 jobs on hold because of a tax that would help Seattle's homeless population. They just caved to pressure from Amazon and Starbucks.
The fuck is wrong with y'all?
The Supreme Court sided with Donald Trump on his Muslim ban. President Donald Trump named Brett Kavanaugh as the replacement to Justice Anthony Kennedy. Special counsel Robert Mueller issued the first set of indictments directly related to Russia's alleged hack of the DNC servers. Donald Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, implicated him in a federal crime. Trump's top allies, like Paul Manafort, was found guilty on 8 different counts. Some of his former close allies, like David Pecker of the National Enquirer, decided to flip on Donald Trump. The CFO of the Trump Organization, who knows all of Donald Trump's finances like the back of his hand, has now flipped.
Problem with socialism, in the words of Margaret Thatcher, at a certain point you run out of spending other people's money. Venezuela.
Less than a week after learning about a new study that warned of a runaway global warming effect, Chairman Tom Perez announced a new rule in order to reverse the DNC's 2-month ban on fossil fuel contributions. And guess what? The DNC adopted it. The DNC actually surprisingly voted to overhaul their brazenly undemocratic superdelegate system. And this is a huge step in the right direction. Senator John McCain from Arizona has passed. President Donald Trump told lawmakers on Thursday he wants to scrap a pay raise for civilian federal workers. A slim majority of Republicans now want single payer too. He was killed in his own apartment.
To tarnish my son's reputation in his death, I will not sit back.
We will not cooperate with the ICC. We will provide no assistance to the ICC, and we certainly will not join the ICC.
Beto is way hotter than you do. We believe survivors.
The nationwide prison strike that started on August 21st. Not only did he dodge incredibly important questions that we need to hear him answer, whether or not the president has the power to pardon himself or whether or not he'd vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, chalking these questions up to hypotheticals. We recently learned that he might have possibly committed perjury or misled the Senate at a minimum on 5 different occasions.
This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups.
Brett Kavanaugh, to no one's surprise, was confirmed to the Supreme Court.
On behalf of our nation, I want to apologize to Brett.
Jeff Bezos just caved to activists and Bernie Sanders and raised Amazon's minimum wage. Bernie Sanders beat Jeff Bezos here. California Governor Jerry Brown has officially signed their state's net neutrality bill into law. The Justice Department announced that they would be suing the state of California, challenging this. There is only a dozen years for global warming to be kept to a maximum of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Khashoggi flew to Istanbul and entered the Saudi consulate to obtain documents that would seal his marriage to his Turkish fiancée. They believe he has been killed.
We cannot have an ally who murders in cold blood in their own consulate.
There's been a lot of commotion when it comes to the caravan that is headed here from Honduras. There's this absurd idea that Middle Easterners and potentially members of ISIS infiltrated this caravan. I mean, last week it was transgender Americans, when Trump's administration was essentially trying to define them out of existence, when the Justice Department said that businesses can fire individuals if they're trans, and then we have Trump claiming that immigrants in the caravan coming from Central America, they're criminals, they're young, strong men, and then we have bombs being sent by a right-wing terrorist. We have mass shootings occurring on what seems like a weekly basis, hate crimes being committed, police brutality against people of color, and then this last weekend we have Jewish Americans being killed at a synagogue. I mean, this is demoralizing. So when our hate monger in chief headed to Pittsburgh to make a speech and pay respect to the victims of the synagogue attack, he was met by thousands of protesters. Brazil had a presidential election and it went horribly wrong. Brian Kemp put more than 50,000 voter registrations on hold. Voter ID laws, voter roll purges. They specifically target people of color, and no, that's not an unforeseen consequence, it's a feature. Their voices have been hindered by a lack of polling places needed to accommodate the demand for voters who actually want to make their voices heard. But knowing that having just one polling place might not necessarily stop these voters from voting altogether, what are Republicans doing now? They're just removing that polling place from the town altogether.
I'm not calling Mr. DeSantis a racist. I'm simply saying the racists believe he's a racist.
But Democrats have taken back the House of Representatives.
Are you worried? That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's enough.
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
More than 200 youth activists, flanked by Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, flooded House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi's office this morning.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Ocasio-Cortez.
Ocasio-Cortez.
In an attempt to criticize her for any and every little thing she says or does, it's getting a little bit comical. They're starting to actually look ridiculous.
She had these multi-$1,000 outfits that could pay a month's rent in Washington, D.C.
Jane Sanders was vindicated, as NBC5 reports.
Amazing.
This is what Donald Trump decided to tweet out the day before Thanksgiving. Quote, "Whatever happened to global warming?" The reason why he made this tweet at this very convenient time for him was in order to spread misinformation and obfuscate ahead of what would be a bombshell report that his own administration would be releasing the very next day about just how devastating climate change will be, not just to human life, but the U.S. economy.
A free Palestine.
Mark Lamont Hill was fired from CNN because of that speech. Him passing doesn't change the fact that he was a war criminal. Bernie Sanders' resolution to end United States' support to Saudi Arabia as they carry out a literal genocide in Yemen has just advanced. Republican leadership in Congress moved to stall until next year a broadly supported congressional resolution aimed at ending U.S. support for Saudi Arabia's bombing campaign in Yemen.
A Yemeni child dying every 10 minutes. They tell us to wait till January. That would mean thousands of more Yemeni kids dead.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck.
So if you want to defeat Trump, I suggest you back Bernie Sanders during the primary. Because not only is he the best when it comes to policy, but strategically, he's the Democrats' best bet at defeating Trump in 2020.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.